Lagos State Police Command has again spoken of the dire consequences for those it accused of planning another NSAS protest, adding that such a move will be resisted. The warning has come amidst reports that the planned second phase of NSAS protest is built to begin today in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and other cities. Lagos State Police Commissioner Hakeem Odumosu said the protest is backed by, quote, some unpatriotic individuals and groups who are planning to embark on the replica of the recent destructive and violent NSAS protest that left pains and agonies in Lagos State, end of quote. Organizers of the protest, who have been raising awareness on social media, said the second phase was to demand, among other things, the release of all protesters detained during the first action and freezing of all accounts frozen by the Central Bank of Nigeria as a result of the earlier protest, and a referendum. We need to chat about this. Lagos State Police saying you can't go out there. No second wave of NSAS protest.
Well, I completely understand where the Lagos State Police is coming from, especially because they had so many casualties amongst their members and they had destruction of their stations and what have you. But there is no justification for banning protests. That cannot be justified in a democracy. It simply can't. You cannot violate fundamental human rights. You can restrict them, but there's a lawful order, there's a procedure for restricting them, and that procedure involves a court of law, which has happened to rule against this notion of the police needing to grant permission. The Inspector General and ANPP case, the Court of Appeal ruled that there is no recourse for protesters to have to get police permission to exercise their right to peaceful protest. So while I do understand what the police is trying to prevent, they should take an alternative method and guarantee security for people who do protest peacefully. If you're bearing placards, it's completely different from those who were bearing cutlasses, those who killed police officers, and those who looted. I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that peaceful protesters cannot be distinguished from hoodlums in this situation. They're completely different. So what should happen is that the protesters should be given a venue where they can lawfully protest, security should be provided, and that protest should be contained. But the right of people to have their voices heard cannot be violated. It is protected by the Constitution. So I do think the police is taking the wrong approach here.
Well, this is not the first time this matter will come up. A few weeks ago, the spokesperson of the police in Lagos, Muyiwa Adejobi, issued a statement in which he said that any form of protest, whether it is lawful or it is unlawful, or any form of gathering whatsoever, will not be allowed in Lagos State. And some of the paragraphs in the statement that he now issued over the weekend were in fact taken from that original statement that was issued about the same time when the Inspector General of Police gave an open directive to all the commands under his watch that no form of protest should be allowed, that no NSAS protest will be allowed again. What is different in this statement that the police command in Lagos has put out and the one that was issued previously is that now they are talking of unlawful gathering. Previously they said whether it is lawful or unlawful, any kind of gathering in Lagos would not be allowed. But that modification is again unacceptable. But what has led to it? Over the weekend, a group suddenly showed up on Twitter and fixed December 7 for protests across certain states of the Federation. And they called it hashtag NSAS Reloaded 2. That's NSAS Protest Part 2. And they had also, in what they put out, specific demands. They are demanding that the Chief of Army Staff, the President, and the Governor of Lagos State should resign. They're saying that these persons should be handed over to the International Criminal Court for prosecution for, crimes against humanity. And you will recall that there have been a group of Nigerians who had petitioned the International Criminal Court previously, before now, and the ICC had said they will look into it. They are asking that all NSAS protesters that may have been arrested and detained and that may still be in detention should be freed forthwith. And then they also say that all accounts, bank accounts belonging to NSAS protesters that were frozen based on the directive of the central bank should be released so that people can access them. And this statement now is in response to that. But as Tuno has already explained, yes, the state does not have the right to say people should not protest. The right to assemble, the right to express, the right of the freedom of thought, the right of expression, all these are constitutionally guaranteed rights under Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If you want to be more specific, the relevant sections will be 35, 38, 39, 40, and 41 in that Constitution. Now, as far back as 2002, there was something the police relied on to restrict people from protesting. It was called the Public Order Act of 2002. And under that Public Order Act, you could not have any procession or any gathering or any form of protest except with the express permission of the police. Now, it was that Public Order Act of 2002 that was set aside in the case that you quoted. That's the IGP versus AMPP. And the court ruled in that particular case that nobody needs to take any permission from the police to be able to gather or to express an opinion or to express, exercise the freedom of thought. So I think that the police needs to be properly advised. I think they have a legal department in the police, but that legal department we have seen being thrown under the bus, even by the police management team. And that raises questions about how, the quality of knowledge in terms of law and precedents, that is available to police. If it is not available at the level of the Inspector General's office, is it, the state commands that can show enough knowledge about fundamental human rights? So this is part of the paradox that we deal with. The second, the other leg of it is this presumption all over the place now that if anybody criticizes government, that amounts to treason. How does that amount to treason? So that's not the definition of treason under the Constitution. And the definition that some people have come up with, treason, regime change, is a figment of their own imagination. Because all the persons who have been protesting, either under NSAS or as members of the Northern Elders Forum expressing an opinion, they are not talking about regime change. They're saying basically that certain things are wrong in terms of governance in Nigeria. And I think that such persons should be allowed to have their say. And if anything, the police should even be more interested in protecting them. However, the police may be smarting from the heart of the NSAS protests. And maybe that's why they are adopting this tone. Because there was a line in that statement by the police command in Lagos that Lagos has not yet recovered from the effect of the October protest, and that the state of Lagos cannot accommodate any kind of protest now. So the assumption is that, any form of protest will be violent, and the cost will be, at great risk to the state. But that may not necessarily be so. It is the responsibility of the police to protect the protesters and to make sure that, the protest is lawful and it is peaceful.
All right, let everybody just do their job and make our country grow. That's all on News Headlines. We'll take a short break. Now, when we return, we'll have the trio of Road to Sudiri, Michael Wilson, Aaron Akerjala, to give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. It's now time to bring the Road to Sudiri, dependable Africa business analyst. Rotu, how are you doing?
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tundu. We kick off with ASUU, the ongoing negotiations between ASUU and the federal government. They are requesting more time with respect to negotiations that have been ongoing between them and the federal government. That is, of course, the Academic Staff Union of Universities and the federal government. They were supposed to have met on Friday, but it's understood that, according to our sister publication this day, they are requesting an extension until Wednesday in order for them to be able to consult with all their branches in order to bring them up to speed on the latest deliberations with the government, which of course has to do with the federal government wanting them to use IPPIS, the Integrated Payroll Personnel Information System, and ASUU wanting to use the UTAS, the University Transparency Accountability Solution. So they're still ongoing. But look, there's an impact here on the wider economy with what's going on with these delays. As we know, the lecturers still end up getting paid outside of all these, with all these strikes, right? That's why it's a recurring decimal that continues to happen again and again and again between ASUU and the federal government. And they're essentially being paid for not working during the periods where these strikes continue to happen. So that's one point to consider. Secondly, you have to think about the impact on the graduates who are not in school right now, who end up not being trained, and then you now think about the pass-through effect of them entering corporate Nigeria and lack of expertise, lack of proper training, and what that effect has on the institutions, in private institutions and even public institutions that hire them to work. And then also the ecosystem around the universities. The individuals that sell food to the students, the ones that have cyber cafes, the ones that print out documents, photocopy IDs, and so on and so forth. There's an entire ecosystem around the university systems that have practically, died over the last 6 to 7 months that these negotiations have continued. So, and we haven't heard much from the parties talking about what the casualties are of these continuous negotiations and delays. So it's a big issue with respect to the effects on the economy. I mean, when you think about what universities can be doing, look at Oxford University and AstraZeneca with their COVID-19 vaccine that they put together. The research studies that universities put out, I think the funding model for universities has to be looked at, to where the government shouldn't be the one, paying salaries and so on. They can be self-funded. You can look at universities in other climes that have endowment funds and so on and so forth. So it's something that has to be looked at. But again, the gist of it is ASUU wants more time. Wednesday, they'll probably reconvene with the federal government and they'll continue their discussions. Next up, we have a tweet here from Bashir Ahmed, special advisor to the president on media, with respect to palliatives for artisans. Says federal government has commenced 30,000 naira grants to taxis, buses, Okadas, Keke Napep, Uber, Bolt drivers, and cart pushers across the country. This is in furtherance of its commitment to support small businesses to cushion the economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. I believe Laolu Akande, special advisor to Vice President Osibanjo on media, he also talked about an MSME survival fund months ago, where they said they would be assisting artisans. I think the total amount is about 330,000 artisans that are supposed to be assisted. So they are disbursing these funds to try to, as Bashir Ahmed said in his tweet, cushion the effect of COVID-19. However, how far does 30,000 go? Still, it's a good measure. They're getting at least some kind of assistance. If you think about what a bus driver makes in a typical day or week, this will go in some measure towards assisting them. But there's a whole lot of other sectors that are yet to receive palliatives. The aviation sector, for instance, they are yet, we understand there have been deliberations there with respect to them getting some assistance, but we still don't know what that amount has come to. So there are other sectors that need a lot of help from the federal government with respect to the impact of COVID-19. This is still a good measure. It's still, we're still seeing some help here. But the two key points: how far does 30,000 go, and is this an illustration of where the government can play when it comes to palliatives? Because a lot more money is being needed. United States, I don't know if I should be using the US as an example, but their first bailout to the aviation sector, they came out about 29, almost $30 billion. So, and they're still asking for more. So there's a lot of funds that need to be pumped into these different sectors that need help. Finally, compressed natural gas and vehicles. The federal government put out a tweet correcting the technical advisor to Timipre Silva, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, in which he gave an interview where he said that Nigerians would be paying 250,000 naira for converting their gas-guzzling cars to CNG, compressed natural gas. So they put out a tweet saying that, look, this is incorrect. He actually, in fact, so the government put out a tweet saying that he corrected himself, but he actually spoke to journalists on Friday, saying that the interview he gave where he said Nigerians will have to pay 250,000 naira for the conversion was incorrect. So the federal government essentially is restating that it is free, and they are planning on converting at least 1 million cars to CNG from PMS between now and the end of 2021. However, there's been a lot of rumblings about this, because it's understood that some vehicles have already completed this conversion, and the amount in question isn't anywhere near 250,000. It's much less. So, you know, they're saying, look, now that the federal government has gotten involved in this, why are they quoting 250,000? Also, you have to think about the cost to government. If they're going to, assuming that 250,000 was a slip of tongue, and that's what the cost to be to government to convert, 250,000, a million cars, 250 billion naira between now and the end of 2021. So, you know, we'll see how it goes. Essentially, as far as the government being able to, you know, chest this cost themselves, it's a measure that they are trying to put as far as clean energy is concerned, and according to their estimates, it's going to cost about 97 naira per liter to fuel your vehicle with CNG as opposed to paying 168 now. And if oil prices, as they continue to rise, we might see Nigerians paying more for fuel. So it's something that the government has said that, look, you're not paying 250,000. It's going to be completely free.
Okay, Rotus, I mean, great point you raised there. Number one, I'll talk about CNG before I move to the MSMEs. The first thing about CNG we have to understand is it's a good measure. Other countries are using it around the world, but I just have some very important and salient questions. Number one will be, conversion of cars, about 1 million cars. What is going to be the criteria to pick those cars? Are you just going to have a lottery where you register the car forward and people can come and convert your cars? Secondly, the availability of CNG. Because you see, once this happens and there has to be a lot of demand for CNG, hope we are not going to see price tend forward and increase. That's another question I want to ask. If they can give those assurances, and they can also give us assurances of how the buses are going to be, how the cars are going to be. Maybe I could put my car forward, or you could put your car forward in a very free and transparent method. I want to talk about MSMEs. 30,000, yes, would not go a long way, but at least it is something. But for me, more pertinently for me, is the fact that the aviation sector, I don't know if you checked the papers this morning, prices of airfares have tripled. And it's because that bailout money, that money has not gone into the aviation sector. Recently, I think it was Arica, that sacked a couple of staffs, members of staff. Quite very daunting. Terrible time for about 200 members of staff. That was apart from the pilots that were sacked in the thick of COVID, that they were having back and forth as regards. They said they had recalled, and I think that was Air Peace. The aviation sector is on its knees. Look at the American aviation sector. They said they put 29 billion into. It's still on its knees. Spirit had to take a big hit in the market, isn't it? And some other airlines in America. Look at what is happening to people like EasyJet. They're losing a lot of money. Ryanair, they're losing a lot of money. So something has to be done, and it has to be a deeper capital injection to these sectors more than anything. And also the 30,000 naira for MSMEs. How are they going to disperse that money? Is it going to be party cronies or party loyalists? Or is it going to be a transparent method? I keep saying, can we go on a lottery online and our names just be picked and the money is forwarded into our account without any middleman or political affiliation?
Well, let me start with ASUU. I think the problem between ASUU and federal government is one of trust. You'll recall that the negotiations, they've met 7 times this year, since March, when the dispute was declared. And it is just unfortunate that even now, after the last meeting of around November 27th or thereabouts, we've not been able to see any speck of light at the end of the tunnel. But I think the big issue is one of trust. ASUU does not trust the federal government. The federal government initially promised 65 billion. It increased it to 70 billion, 40 billion for earned allowances, 30 billion for earned allowances, 40 for revitalization fund. But what ASUU is saying, that yes, what has been put on the table as at the last meeting is an offer. They need to see commitment. And ASUU says it's consulting various chapters across the country. And what we see in some of the reports is that some of the chapters are saying, well, it is when they see the money inside their bank accounts that they will believe that government actually means well. Because previously, the federal government had reneged on agreements. And you know the most contentious agreement is the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed in 2013, which is part of the issues we're dealing with. So I don't know how this will be resolved, because the big cost of it, you already explained it. I mean, children stranded at home, other businesses, affected. Other unions within the university system are also raising concern, and the university system is just there at a standstill. and is the future of the country that we're toying with at the end of the day. As we said previously on this program, by the time many of those students return, they probably will have forgotten whatever they learned, in the last academic session. That is that. Now, the 30,000 that will be distributed in 6 geopolitical zones to 330,000 Nigerians. This is what they call the Survivor Fund, which is a component of the Economic Sustainability Plan that government announced as part of the package, the 2.3 trillion that the Office of the Vice President announced as Economic Sustainability Bailout. Now, they are targeting Okada riders, Uber drivers, and all that. It's not as if we have a national database of anybody riding Okada or Keke Napep or Keke Marua or what. I don't know so much about all this, Uber, Rotus, you probably know this category. But anyway, I'm joking. So it's not as if there is a national database. And that is why it is important that, this well-intentioned objective, although 30,000 is a one-off grant, is not politicized. The big issue we had with the 1,000 jobs in the 774 local councils was also about politics, people trying to use it to play politics. We hope that a mechanism, a system will be put in place to ensure transparency, accountability, and fairness.
Excellent points, yes.
All right, thank you so much for that, Rotus. We'll move on to Michael Wilson now joining us from London.
Good morning. Yes, Asian markets not really reacting to those more record highs on Friday from the United States. Basically, the news that the Trump administration on its way out is preparing new sanctions on Hong Kong and mainland China officials. This time, the culprit is Beijing's disqualification of elected legislators in Hong Kong, proving that obviously geopolitics are very much on the table, as it were, as the Trump administration goes out. The Nikkei down about 0.5%, Kospi down about 0.2%. China, but the Hang Seng bore the brunt of it, down almost 2%. As far as China's concerned, some good news for them. Another one, that China's exports actually rebounded hugely in November. But the good news about that is that not just about China, but also indicates some kind of increase in global demand, which is very, very good in these kind of days. Import also demand increased in China by 4.5%. Again, an indication that economy itself is intrinsically doing reasonably well. And look at this, its trade surplus widened to $75.42 billion versus 53 expected. So a huge amount more than actually expected as far as China's concerned. So just back to Friday, and those jobless figures in the United States seem to confirm everything that we suspect about the US economy. Whilst it's actually quite good, it's clear that COVID is in fact hampering it. The non-farm payrolls only added 245,000 jobs in November, less than expected. And so there's like 10 million jobs waiting to be, or 10 million people without jobs in the United States, if you compare that to pre-pandemic levels. What it may do, though, is it might add some sort of vim and some gathering together of the stimulus talks in the United States. Once again, I give you the figures. They're still a long, long way apart. $908 billion package is on the table. The Democrats wanted $2.5 trillion. So, very, very difficult to say whether actually anything's going to happen. We do have this date of December the 11th package to be voted on. It could appear, I'm being told, as early as today, in other words, the details of that, but we'll absolutely wait to see. The other wait to see thing, of course, is Brexit, trade, UK, and all the rest of it. A lot of knife-edge talk over the weekend again. That helped sterling go down, and then it may come back up again. And so, but there are two little bits of legislation coming back to the UK today, as well as all this. UK Parliament talking about the Internal Markets Bill, which is this rather complicated look at where Northern Ireland actually stands within the island of Ireland, and also in regard to the mainland of the UK, which is where I'm sitting right now, and of course a taxation bill. So European markets as well are expected to be looking at that, worried about it too. There's been a lot of ratcheting up over the past few days. The French apparently came back to the negotiating trade talks table and started to raise other issues as well. They started to ratchet up their fishing demands. Again, fishing a very, very small part of our economy, but it's totemic in terms of island security. And we've had various outbursts of optimism. We've had the Ireland's foreign minister saying that a deal was 98% certain. Ireland's prime minister saying that a deal was no more than 50-50. So France is really in the driving seat right now. As far as commodities are concerned, well, OPEC Plus reached an agreement to add just 500,000, as you probably heard, on Friday per day in January. That's more than the markets expected. But OPEC Plus got out of this meeting that those production targets will be looked at month on month, rather than this kind of 3-month cycle that they're in at the moment. Gold may have traced a long-term low. Maybe gold's on its way back. There's nothing really to suggest it, only comparisons with US Treasuries, which are too boring to go into, but that's the situation as it stands at the moment. Week ahead, well, not a lot of stuff really, but we're going to be looking at some European European inflation figures. That'll dominate that, and also that news from China is actually quite good. I feel that's sort of setting the tone for the day. But if there's any news about Brexit, any news about the US stimulus, then that'll help markets out of their pre-Christmas torpor. That is the global view so far this morning.
Well, good morning, Michael. Once again, Matt Hancock has been talking about historic moment in Britain, in the UK. And I guess in that regard, he's referring to the fact that, V-Day is tomorrow. And again, the other big news in Europe at the moment is Brexit. The fish, I guess, is off the table, but the knife is right there on the table, and everything has gone so frosty. Are you still optimistic that in the next 48 hours, something will be done, that a deal will emerge, or we should, reconcile ourselves to the prospect of a no deal, particularly as France may still pull out of the talks? And then what's the mood in the UK about V-Day tomorrow?
Yeah, here's what I think's pushing it. I think there will be some sort of agreement. As I've been saying, I don't think it'll be exactly the sort of agreement that everybody wants. But then again, agreements rarely are. So I think there'll be some sort of deal, and I think there will be, simply because what I didn't mention to you is the fact that there's going to be obviously a European summit this week. This is the end of Germany's particular tenure as being president or being the boss of the EU talks. We know what's happening there. They do need to agree some kind of budget. Other nations within the EU are getting very impatient about the progress of these talks, not just blaming the UK, but blaming France and also Germany for not actually banging heads together, and indeed not the president of the presidency of the EU for trying to get something done. Matt Hancock, I think, has been very puffed up by the fact that of the vaccine story and so on. Once again, I mean, my neighbour, I can tell you, is actually in charge of that vaccine going out in Wales, which is one of the countries, one of the constituent parts of the UK, as your listeners, your viewers probably know, and that is proceeding very, very slowly indeed. So and the problem with these drugs is that they need to be kept at such a low temperature, and they have a very limited shelf life, and you have to push it through to a relatively willing population. Heaven knows what's going to happen globally. So to answer your question, I think there will be some sort of compromise. I still think these things do tend to go down to the wire. I know it doesn't look very optimistic at the moment. I may be proved completely wrong by the middle of the week. I certainly hope I'm not.
Right. Real quickly, the Chancellor of the Exchequer and his furlough schemes seems to be expanding. How long can you run those schemes for? Because you talked about a couple of months ago, owing to the fact that it's looking very imminent now that Britain will have to crash out. I know it's a word you Brits don't want to hear of the EU.
I think many people in every country are questioning the wisdom of actually paying people not to work. Now, again, it had to happen in the same way that people questioned quantitative easing after the big financial crisis in 2008. These are unprecedented times. All I can tell you is I'm certain that the Treasury officials, the Chancellor's officials, will be looking at the results of this weekend's particular consumer spending in the UK, which was high, not as high as pre-pandemic levels, but people did flock back. They'll be looking at Christmas, and they'll be looking at how our spending habits and indeed what we've actually saved will be applied back into the economy to try to work out whether or not there's going to be a sharp increase in the economy in 2021. Again, all bets are off about that, but I mean, I suspect that these schemes will probably continue. We are going to have to pay the bills for them. Politicians are not equipped for this. Our grandchildren will be paying all the bills, all those kind of things. But I still think there's quite a few figures to actually come out of the economy before we start making guesses about that. But I think if they have to, then they probably will. I suspect there'll be some sort of compromise and some sort of tapering off.
All right, yeah. V is for victory. Hopefully that'll be a V-Day landing for them. For more updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Aaron Akerjala is here with us. Aaron, great to have you.
Good morning to you, Rufai. Lovely weekend, I must actually say. Tundum.
Morning, Aaron.
Lovely mint green today. And Doctor?
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Here on the bearer.
It's good to be here today, and fantastic weekend, but certainly the numbers are still rising in terms of COVID-19. A lot has been said about the vaccine, but before we get into that vaccine talk, let's actually look at the numbers globally. At the moment, we can actually see that the last 24 hours, 534,051 were the number of COVID-19 cases globally, up by 5% using the 14-day change trend. And now the 14-day change trend that I always mention actually uses the 7-day average. So looking at how things have actually played out in the last 7 days, it simply means that it's been up by 5% and deaths are up by 12%, which is quite alarming. We've been seeing it. We've not seen deaths plateau for a while right now. 7,142 were the last numbers that came in the last 24 hours. Now, looking at that, moving away from that, like we always say to people, if you want the latest on COVID-19, it's always good to go to arise.tv. It's actually detailed in the number of the stats there from Nigeria. You can actually see Nigeria there having well over 69,255 cases at the moment. The number of deaths still at 1,180, and they recovered 64,774. And there are even breakdowns there. There's a global map there. There's a world map there. So if you want everything COVID-19 related news and statistics, the place to go to is arise.tv there. Click on the COVID-19 icon and it just takes you there. It's all detailed there to the letter. Now, moving away from that, let's actually bring this one in, as this news actually broke this morning, early this morning, that Rudy Giuliani, President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, has tested positive for COVID-19. In Trump's own words, and I quote, he says, "Get better soon, Rudy. We will carry on." We know that Giuliani had been admitted to the Georgetown University Hospital yesterday, a few hours after Trump had actually put out that tweet, and he's saying that he's feeling good at the moment. But there are no details to his condition, and it's unclear if he had received a positive test for COVID-19. But we know that that is his case right now. President Donald Trump confirming it, and he himself confirming that he is COVID-19 positive. We're still monitoring the situation, but moving away from this to the UK, where by as early as tomorrow, which is good news for those out there, the UK will begin administering their COVID-19 vaccine from the Pfizer-BioNTech effort. All right, it's called the BNT162b2, and that particular vaccine will be out from tomorrow, with the NHS giving top priority to vaccinating over 80s, the frontline health workers. If they can actually help us with the graph, it actually breaks it down. Those that will be getting this particular, the BNT 162b2, all right, like I said, residents in care homes for older adults and their carriers will get them. Everyone aged 80 and above and frontline health workers will be the first to get this particular vaccine. People aged 75 and also over, people aged 75 and over, and those who are clinically extremely vulnerable. Now, to some others that will be getting the well over 65 plus, and people aged 16 to 40 with underlying health conditions there. So that's the breakdown of those that will be getting it from tomorrow. So we'll be monitoring that particular situation. Just to remind people of what we're talking about, this particular effort, the BNT 162B2, actually is the third looking at this particular vaccines there. It's not the cheapest, but certainly it's one of the cheapest out there. We can actually see that you have to take 2 doses 3 weeks apart to be able for it to kick in fully. And so far from the results report that actually came in, it's been showing 95% efficacy rate, and the talks are still about the refrigerating or storing this particular vaccine. It's quite Herculean because you need minus 70 degrees Celsius to be able to store it properly. Now, moving away from that, still talking about vaccines, now to Indonesia, where Indonesia are right now. They've actually ordered some vaccines from China. At the moment, shipments are actually coming in from China, as Indonesia received its first shipment of coronavirus from China on Sunday. Those are the pictures there. President Joko Widodo said that the government prepares mass inoculation program, and at the moment, let's see how far that will actually go. And speaking about vaccines, the Serum Institute in India has sought emergency use authorization for India's drug regulators for AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine on Sunday. At the moment, they are pushing really hard and saying that we want to start producing these things so that as soon as there is a green light for that particular effort, we will be able to inoculate the people or vaccinate the people, as the case may be. Before I actually go, we're talking about symptoms of COVID-19, and one of the latest that is actually coming in is the fact that conjunctivitis is conjunctivitis, I beg your pardon, is one of those symptoms added to the long list of symptoms of those who have COVID-19. As a particular lady, they actually found that she didn't have any symptoms that were normal. All the flu symptoms that actually accompany COVID-19, but this simply is it. For those that don't know what conjunctivitis is, you can actually see that. Look at how a healthy eye looks like, minus an eye that is inflamed with conjunctiva.
Wow, so the list of symptoms just continues to grow. We have even more to look out for. Yeah. Good heavens. But on the issue of the vaccines in the UK, that's really good news. And I like the kind of advocacy that's been done, with it being announced that the Queen of England and her consort, Prince Philip, will be taking the vaccines. You have high-profile figures in the UK who are over 80, like Esther Ranson, who I love, and like Gloria Hunniford, talking about how they'll take the vaccine. Yeah. I find that kind of advocacy so much better than this notion of trying to coerce people and blackmail people into getting a jab. The government shouldn't be lazy. They should go out and campaign, same as they did for Brexit with that big red bus. They should have like a COVID vaccine bus and go across the country convincing people rather than trying to restrict people's civil liberties, because those who are asking questions have the right to do so. Yes. Personally, I have the greatest respect for scientific endeavor, and I'm not like a anti-vaxxer by any stretch of the imagination, but then there are people who do wonder about the, speed of it or the haste.
10 months, actually.
Yes, so people do have the right to ask questions. So proper advocacy should be done using those high-profile people, using like literature, continuous, clear messaging is the way to go about it, I feel. But it's great that they're rolling out from tomorrow.
Yes, it's good for us to acknowledge what is going on in the United Kingdom and the use of the, influencers, the power of celebrities. I recall that about a week ago, when that idea was put on the table, they said very clearly that those who are going to promote it will not be politicians. I guess also in the UK, the people do not necessarily trust their politicians. But of course, we'll find high-profile figures like Boris Johnson himself and others, taking the vaccine. And already, look at the level of preparation. 50 hospitals have already been identified as hubs for administering the vaccine. So you see a state that plans ahead, that thinks ahead. Controversies may emerge, but they deal with those controversies. And you cited the example of Indonesia. And the question to ask again was the issue you raised last week. I think you raised the issue about the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria expressing concern about what the Nigerian government is doing as to how to get, the vaccines to be prepared. We may say that the figures are low here, I mean, just around the 70,000 or thereabouts, but we can see that there are still cases, and the numbers have been rising in the last 1 week or so, maybe due to increased testing. And it's not something that we can just ignore and treat as if it is not important enough. So you have cited the example of Indonesia. Look at Argentina. Over the weekend, the Senate in Argentina, and the Chamber of Deputies, followed by the Senate, they passed what they call the millionaire's tax, under which the state itself is going to tax about 12,000 multimillionaires or billionaires in Argentina to fund measures that will be adopted by the government of Argentina. I know that here in Nigeria we have a private sector coalition that has done very well, but the private sector coalition in Nigeria, in addition to other millionaires, can still be approached to contribute a lot. In Argentina, they are raising over $3.5 billion just to be able to have an effective response. So there are lessons we can learn from other jurisdictions. It's not rocket science, as you have seen in some other countries. And then as for Rudy Giuliani, I mean, he's 76, and like most members of President Trump's inner circle, he has been exposing himself a lot, and most persons within the Trump inner circle, of course, that they don't follow CDC guidelines. And we have seen dozens of them coming down with COVID-19. Only 2 weeks ago, Giuliani's son, Andrew Giuliani, who is a special assistant to President Trump, also came down with COVID-19. But that notwithstanding, we wish him very well. We wish him speedy recovery. We're told that he has not shown symptoms yet, but at 76, he falls into a high-risk group. And by the way, you quoted President Trump, who announced that his lawyer, the leader of his legal team, is down with COVID. But he still made this racist statement, referring to it as China virus. Yeah. So President Trump won't give up.
Unfortunately, Doctor, some things never change.
No.
All right, very sad, Dan, and I wish Rudy Giuliani well. America's favorite mayor. We want him to get back on his feet, and we don't want anybody to die from COVID-19. But I'm quite very iffy about what Russia is doing. Over the weekend, Russia started giving it Sputnik V, and it's not gone through third phase trial. I don't know if the World Health Organization can step in as regards that. A lot of Russians too are iffy about it. But the state is going ahead, and you know what Russia is like, sort of like a dictatorial state, as it were. It claims it's a democracy, but has no vestiges of democracy, I would reckon. So I'm quite iffy about that. If the World Health Organization can step in, you can't start to give vaccines that have not passed the third stage, trial. Because normally, after having the third stage trial, you still need to subject it to proper peer review over the years. And it's the peer review that takes a very long while before you now finally churn out vaccines. And that's why it could take 10, 15 years to go through the vaccine process. We're churning this out in 10 months. That's bad enough. Sputnik 5 all of a sudden has not passed third phase trial and has been rolled out to a lot of citizens because Putin and his children, his daughter, claimed they have taken this and it worked for them and things like that. So I think in all of this too, we should quite be careful. And one other thing I'd like to make a point on is zero prevalence. That's zero prevalence test, Aaron. If we have any...
Time and time again, Rufai, we're yet to see it kick off. We're yet to see it kick off.
He said he started. That's what he told us when he was here, Dr. Chikwazu, that he was starting, that they were even extending the number of states. Because that's going to be a barometer for me to be able to measure the prevalence of COVID-19 in Nigeria. So I'm still looking for that test. But at the same time, also, like Dr. Abatin Tunda sounded off, we should all start seeing what we can do to get ourselves ready when the vaccines come in.
All right, in terms of that Sputnik 5, like we know, they are not alone, because we know Cancino Bio, the effort from another company in China there, they've been giving their vaccines to the military for quite a while right now. And the point is that there are always big question marks when the peer reviews and science has not really given it their blessing, so to speak, or giving it the green light to go ahead to start giving it. But nevertheless, they are saying that they're still doing it, and I don't think that would actually stop at the moment. But let's keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully, these vaccines are safe, and we do not have more problems in our hand than was created initially.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that's great. Most importantly, I'm happy about the fact that most of these vaccines are not attenuated viruses. They are not weakened viruses. They are just messenger mRNA.